Oh, Keenan, I think
I'm
you.
ready. I found it. Yeah. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Games and Education. This time I have an amazing guest on, Dr. Sunny Magana, who is uh, a university professor. Where are you? I always forget where it was. It's at
No, I was.
oh,
I
you
was.
was.
Now, yeah, now I'm independent.
Excellent. But where was it again?
City University in Seattle, Washington.
I saw that. A professor from Seattle, Washington. Let me start all over. This is bad. Welcome to another episode of Games and Education. Today we have on Sunny Magana, who is really his work. He actually has a whole project called T1 to T3 of innovation in the classroom. And if you have a chance to read his book, Disruptive Classroom Technologies, it's one of the greatest books I think on, or the ideas at least in it are so great in how you can make a form of education that is engaging to students. And I had him on my show because while so many people have ideas about education, Sunny Magana focuses on the research of education. And when I talked to him, I went to one of his presentations. He really talked about how through research, we can validate so many techniques to engage students. And so many of them sounded like games in the classroom. And I went to him after and I said, you have actual statistics and information about how games and other activities can engage students in the classroom. I'd love to have you on this podcast to reinforce what you do with data and statistics. And so without further ado, thank you for being here, Sunny, or Dr. Magana, however you prefer to
Oh,
be.
no, please call me Sunny.
All right.
It's all my friends call me Sunny.
Excellent. We have Sunny here.
Yes,
And
thank you very much for that kind introduction. I'm really delighted to talk to you about this because this is it's really exciting to reframe what we do from the world of research and evaluation and study through the lens of practice. You know, praxis is what we call it, which is the art and science of taking what we know from the research literature and applying it into actual classroom practices and looking through a further lens of gamification, for lack of a better word, gamification, and trying to gamify what we do in our classrooms. A really exciting concept. So I'm delighted to be here to talk with you about it.
And I'll say a lot of it you actually focus on here isn't just that there is an idea I think we both know of gamification where it's just points and leveling up. That is, we understand a part of it, but a lot of what we talk about here is you can transform anything into a game by making it engaging, connecting with the students, making it that their own creations of things. And I think in your research, that's what you even talked about more. And I'd love you to share your ideas or what you noticed in the research of it about how kind of giving students control, which is to what I talk about this podcast, what a game is, how that affects students and engagement in the classroom. Would you be able to share about that a little bit?
Yeah, I know. It's a great way to launch off. And I think we have to come to a mutual understanding of what we mean by a game. It sounds a bit silly, I suppose. But
it's not. It's amazing. I've been asking. That's the question I kind of ask everybody. So please share.
Oh, good. Well, I think common explanations and common understanding is derived from discussion, so that we can throw up an idea like a thought balloon, and I pass it over to you, and you kick some holes in it, and you pass it over to me, and then we through the bantering back and forth, we make meaning out of the term game. And so, to me, I'll start off. I think a game is any kind of human interaction that is indicated by enjoyment, by prediction, by some sort of thrill, some immediate feedback, and some constraint. There's got to be some constraint, whether it's time or limited number of moves or limited number of cards, or there's got to be some sort of constraint. So that, to me, is what a game is. It has those indicators. What do you think?
That sounds very similar. I would use, I instead of indicators, I would say there's some rules to it. But yes,
Yeah.
as long as it has, to me, I would say a game is as long as it has some rules to what you're trying to do. And I would say what you're doing, you have control of, and others do not. I guess I'm trying to say it the way that, you are in control of your own destiny in it. You're, I call it, agency.
Yeah.
Agency. I use Daniel Pink's Drive as a big passion of mine. So as long as the student has agency and there's a rule set to it, that's enough to make it a game.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. So now we have a mutually agreed explanation of what a game is. The agency piece is really important. So I'm glad you brought that up. And also, that means choice and the ability to generate and test hypotheses on the fly. So let's start with that, because that was the last thing I said.
I love it. I haven't thought about that, but I actually love that. I've never really thought of games that way. That you're right. Every move you make, every time you try a game, it's testing out hypothesis. Will this strategy work?
Exactly. But
please elaborate more on that. That's amazing.
Yeah, no, that is really high order thinking. I should back up for a second and tell you, I'm really just privileged to work with Professor John Hattie from University of Melbourne, who's a mentor of mine. I'm proud to say he's reviewed my book, and it looks like we're partnering on some interesting and very exciting prospects. But he has what I reckon is the best model of learning. He said learning comes in 3 phases. Surface learning, where we just learn the basic facts. We learn the rules. We learn the details. We learn the ups and downs and the whereabouts of information, basic details, facts, and things that we need to memorize. The kind of the map, the game map, if you will. Surface level learning. Kids that are really good at memorizing do really well at this level, but that's only 1/3 of the journey. After the surface learning, we need to go into deeper learning, and that deeper learning means making more inferential connections between the new knowledge that we're experiencing and some other knowledge that we've either experienced previously or that we know of from some different contexts. We build bridges, we make connections, we deepen those connections, we elaborate on those connections, we develop metaphors or analogies or ways to explain our thinking, and then provide evidence for it. That's deeper learning. But then there's a 3rd level, which is often given short shrift in education. And if we just do more of this, we'll kind of satisfy a lot of interesting things. And that's called knowledge transfer. When you transfer knowledge that you've deeply acquired, and now to consolidate that knowledge, you have to use it. You have to apply it in a certain way. And a go-to strategy is generating and testing hypotheses. These are just claims. When we generate a claim, we're making a hypothesis. A lot of people don't use that term hypothesis, but it is in actuality what we do. We generate a claim, we generate a hypothesis, and then we test it in some way and look for some form of causation or some result from the action. Games allow players to generate and test hypotheses very, very rapidly, really quickly. If I pick this up and turn around, what will happen? And so you think and make a prediction based on what you are experiencing, and you get immediate feedback on that experience. So generating testing hypotheses is one of the most rigorous cognitive processes that we have. It takes the neocortex, our executive functioning, because we have to think strategically. So it taps into the highest order of brain power, and we get a rush from that. We get a real sense of accomplishment, a kind of an endorphin release when we do something that's very cognitively challenging, and it turns out the way we hoped it would. That releases a kind of euphoria, and that's another reason why games are so popular. So let's start with that. Generating testing hypotheses on the fly. It's higher order cognition. We're using the most advanced parts of our brain, and it just feels good to do so.
That's so fascinating that you say that, because the more I think about games, and this is why I love when you talk about games versus gamification, because when we see a lot of gamification out there, it's all about points and gaining levels. But that's almost only a way to track what you said are these 3 steps. Because as you said, the real thing about games is, can you constantly create new strategies to solve the problems?
Yes.
And that is fascinating. I love that. I love thinking about it like that, because I'm looking at like different classes like math and science and social science, and it really does look like the more chance students can have even quick iterations to just test their own ideas, the better for them.
Exactly. To test their ideas and to make those ideas originate from them. See, look, we're a really funny animal. My background is in biology, so I was really a systems biologist. That's why I cut my teeth in the scientific method, studying systems biology and looking at complex interactions of whole systems, environments, many ecosystems, many biomes. And so I can't help but kind of think that way about education. Education is a system, and so learning is a system, gaming is a kind of a system. You combine all three and you get these really interesting interactions. But I'm glad you're making the distinction between gamification, which is a sort of simplistic mechanism, and game theory. What I'm just talking about is game theory.
Which is what I talk about too. That is the most fascinating thing.
It really is. It really is, because we as humans have started playing games very early on in our evolution. Dice made of bones were found. I don't have the facts in front of me, so I could be wrong. But about 5,000 years ago, 5 to 6,000 years ago, I could be wrong, but I think it was a number of millennia, regardless. So we've been fascinated by randomness and chance and choice, and having that sense of agency for a very long time. I think it's part of our DNA. Now, when we look at game theory in the learning environment, the most successful students do exactly what you just described. They come up with all sorts of strategies to be successful at surface learning, deeper learning, and knowledge transfer. So masterful students have more strategies because they're thinking intentionally about cause and effect and generating and testing hypotheses about their learning. And students that are not quite as successful, I'm willing to bet, just don't have as many strategies. So we should be teaching them the strategies, having kids teach each other the strategies for learning multiplying, dividing fractions, or algebra or calculus. We should be doing that in a kind of a game theory crucible, if you will.
Well, actually getting me back to a lesson I just did that was amazing with students. And I always tell, and I hope the teachers listening that I will literally name nameless, but I did a seesaw lesson with students, and I had the students, hold on one sec, my family, I don't know if you can hear them in the background. If you can't, we're good.
No, fine.
Okay, good. Okay, then I'll edit this part out. All right, so that brings up a lesson that I had where I was working with students, and I had one student write a math problem, and then thanks to John Coropo, who I also love, he had a Freyer model.
Oh, Rippo, yeah.
And I had a Freyer model done, and I said, okay, you get to make the problem, and then other students have to draw it 3 ways, and then the class has to check to make sure you did the problem right.
Right.
Now, when I did this, it was like you draw one problem, the others are doing it. It was first grade, so it was like, can you put it in the form of block notation and additive form where it shows like the 10s and the 1s. And I had a teacher go to me and said, well, isn't that just like a worksheet? And I had to explain to them, well, the difference is the students created the problems for another student. Suddenly that alone, in the exact same way we were talking, turns it into a game, because they're now testing the hypothesis. There's not a direct way that they have to solve it. They can solve it in multiple ways. We didn't say exactly what they have to do. And then everybody else is checking it as well to make sure they're doing it right. And suddenly we're turning into a game, but yet it's fascinating that some still say, well, isn't it like a worksheet? But yet we're trying to make that distinction that what you said is, because it is made by them, it is creating a hypothesis for them. And that sounds like a very big thing in your learning. The students are the creators.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That is a key difference, is the generation of the problems. When kids do worksheets, whether they're pencil and paper, analog worksheets, or digital worksheets, the impact on student learning is dismal. We should really just get rid of all of our worksheets, because they just really don't, to quote the book from Dr. Marcia Tate, worksheets don't build dendrites, which is a great title. Unfortunately, she gives away the plot. Worksheets don't build dendrites. This is not anywhere near a worksheet because the students are generating the problem. They're solving it collaboratively. They're talking about it. They're keeping score. Everybody's invested. And the process of critiquing the problem and the methods and the strategies for solving the problem in a way that everybody contributes changes the classroom conversation from a monologue to a dialogue.
That is a wonderful idea. It is that dialogue part about it. Now, I know we'll get to disruptive classroom technologies a little bit in there in a minute, but you mentioned the dialogue of it. Would you care to elaborate? Do you have any research on or ideas about how important the dialogue is? Because that sounds like kind of the biggest part of game theory is that there are others involved in it. And I'm sure there must be some in everything you've done. There has to be some correlation that others' involvement really does create better engagement and outcomes.
Yeah, sure. It really does. And the person who did probably the most comprehensive review of the literature on influences on education is Professor John Hattie. And if our listeners aren't familiar with John Hattie or his work, Visible Learning, this is an invitation to do so, because you'll learn a tremendous amount about our craft, the art and science of teaching, and the means that he uses to measure effectiveness. He uses a scale called effect size. And effect size, if you think of it, is sort of, it's a distillation, a synthesis of not just one or two studies, but tens of thousands of studies. In the tens of thousands of studies. And Professor Hattie uses these techniques to determine a scale based on all that synthesis of research. And we can say from 0 to 1. So from 0 to 1. The average effect of everything that he studied is a 0.4. So that's the hinge point. A 0.4 represents the average amount of learning that the average student will learn in an average year. That's the tipping point, if you will. Anything below that, not so great. Anything above that, really good. When we get to effect sizes of 0.8, 0.9, 1.0 or greater, we're in the realm of an explosion in student achievement. So the tools or the resources that students use to represent their thinking, to have a conversation and to make their knowledge and thinking pathways known to themselves and their teachers. So let me say that again. When students produce some sort of representation of their knowledge and thought to make their thinking and their learning explicit to themselves, their teachers, and their co-students, the effect size of that is 1.29.
That doesn't even seem like realistic.
It is an explosion in learning. It is more than doubling student achievement. So it's like a tripling of student achievement when kids make their learning and their thinking known to themselves and each other. Now, you kindly mentioned my book, Disruptive Classroom Technologies, and the T3 framework. In the T3 framework, the strategies that I call transformational technology use have an effect size of 1.6, which is tantamount to a quadrupling of academic achievement. 1.6 is an enormous effect size, and it's like an average child, an average classroom learning on average 4 additional years of learning in a single year.
And I want to cover one thing about this. I will say this T3 framework, for all my teachers out there, they do need to. It's wonderfully written. And I love the stages in it. To explain a quick, brief one, and I know I can't do it as justice as you, but I'll try and feel free to fill in.
Delighted.
There is translational, which is the basic levels of you're using technology to do automation and consumption. You're replacing the technology of quizzes, but they're quizzes online. It's still the consumption of things. Then you go to transformational T2, which is the level I have seen almost most classes in, and even our district, we will say like we are primarily in that point, is production and contribution. And even at that point, if you pause, that is exactly, it sounds like where you are talking about even before transcendent. But these transformational techniques of students produce and students contribute. And I mean, I can't think of anywhere where games and learning are better than that. Is literally they're contributing their theories and they are producing ideas and they're producing their own strategies. That seems exactly why games are a successful place. They're right in that point of transformational.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now we know it has this giant effect size, but here's something I find interesting, and maybe this is my own brain. Like, I can think of a way to turn a game out of anything. And to me, as a teacher, it actually is easier to make it a game because then the students are kind of quizzing each other and grading each other. And in the end, I have to do less work because they're really working and making their thing. You've been through so around. Why is that so difficult for a lot of people to really reach and do? And it just seems so easy to be like, yeah, do it as a game and go make your own answers and we'll figure it out.
Well, I can answer that from my experience as a teacher myself, because I taught for 30 years. I can answer from looking at a variety of teachers in a variety of different circumstances, not just in this country but in other countries. I think this is if not, it's not the only contributing reason, but one reason why is that teachers are like Atlas. We carry the burden of our students' emotional, social, economic, academic well-being on our shoulders like Atlas. And we just feel like we can take on more and more and more and more because we care so much about our kids. Um, I, I've never been in a classroom where I saw teachers who didn't care about their kids. I'm really, that's such a rarity. Um, Teachers care, and they may care to the point of doing things that are better served by kids doing it themselves. So that may be one of the reasons why teachers have a hard time shifting the locus of control from themselves to their students, because they want to make sure their students are successful, and they know that they have tried and true methods that have worked before, and they're reluctant to disrupt those because they know they'll work for the majority of students most of the time. But shifting the locus of control for students so that they're more involved in planning for their learning, representing and expressing their learning, and just as importantly, actively evaluating their progress towards mastery, takes all that off a teacher's plate. It takes all that that burden off of our shoulders. And like Atlas, we should be sort of shifting those globes on our proverbial shoulders to our students so they can become their own Atlases.
That's just a wonderful idea. I kind of want to stop this conversation there. I love that idea of the students becoming their own Atlases. But now I want to go to somewhere in yours, because I will say that is, once again, your T2 step transformational, where that is where this game-like learning comes in. That is where students are making their own projects. That is where they are contributing to their own work, and they're contributing in some way to the classroom. And I can say, as I see things now, a lot of teachers are getting there, and it's a really great place to be. In fact, we kind of realize in our whole district, we're like, yeah, we're really T2. But then you talk about something, and I want to get that in here to see where we can merge this. You then reach that, you say the main level is this transcendent learning, that there's a level afterwards, which is, well, we can go to inquiry design and social entrepreneurship. And what that means is we can go to inquiry design, where students are asking their own questions and solving their own problems. And social entrepreneurship, they're actually doing something that is benefiting society, not just their classroom. They're becoming makers and creators at a level beyond just making things for the sake of things. That takes it a level way beyond almost games. And I'm going to be honest, I'm going to put you on the spot here, because I have been trying to figure this out with a classroom. And to give you an example, I did a lesson with second graders. And the second graders and third graders, I said to them, hey, let's go fix the school and let's go make something better. And they were all jazzed about it. They all wanted to make projects to clean up the trash in the school. And they were working out different ways and designing 3D things. It was awesome. But then I had the fourth and fifth graders. And I said, let's go make something. Let's try to make the world a better place. And even just Oak Park, where we live. And they all just wanted to just play Minecraft and work on their transformational productions, which I will say I do love Minecraft because it is a game where we can build everything. But how do we get people motivated to kind of take that game-like learning, that engagement, and jump it to that next level where they want to do something with it instead of just play?
Yeah, yeah. No, it's a great question, I've thought about this for a long time, and this is why it took me 35 years to write this book because I've been studying the nexus of technology, pedagogy enhanced by technology, for 35 years. And that's about that's how long it took me. Perhaps I'm a slow learner, but I'm methodical, and I've got something of value to share. I don't just have like a whimsical idea. I've thought about this conundrum a lot. Like, how come we can't get there with some kids or with some systems? And here's what I think: there's a sequence. Every learning experience is a journey, and there's a tendency to want to hurry it up and just get there. Like, are we there yet? And I think we have to be patient along the way and recognize that learning is a journey and there's a sequence to our learning. We can't get to transfer of knowledge before we get to deeper knowledge. We can't get to deeper knowledge before we get to surface learning. You have to follow a sequence that is a time-honored and well reviewed process of learning. Just like with transcendent technologies, which, as you very graciously described, takes teaching and learning with technology to a whole new level. If you're a Spinal Tap fan, it takes it to 11. It goes way beyond the original limitations and expectations of public education. But before we get to that, we have to make sure that we're doing everything in the transformational technology domain. And that means having students produce mastery goals, having students track and monitor their mastery goals, having students visualize their mastery goals and produce representations of their mastery. That is, in effect, an actualization of game theory. So when kids see that their learning is increasing because of how they're representing and monitoring and tracking the amount of effort they invest, the progress that results from that effort, and how they feel about it, it makes everything else fall into place. If you don't do those steps of having students produce mastery goals and then monitor, track, and visualize their effort, their progress, and their affect, their feeling, then have them produce mastery representations using digital tools. If you don't master that part, you're not going to get to the T3 part. T2 is an essential set of sequences that builds students' sense of self-efficacy individually and collectively.
And for the audience out there, I'd like to add, after I heard this, I decided to try it out. And I have been using this mastery model in elementary classes. I will post it up as a link in the notes of this episode. It is super easy for any grade. If you're in K through 5, there is literally a chart with just thumbs up and thumbs down and happy faces. And if you're in the upper grades, there's words to explain it. But I tried this mastery chart with students, and I will attest, it is like a invigorating game to them because it actually gives more purpose to what they do. In fact, today I used it, and literally right before I had this meeting with Magana, I work with the after school program. And to tell you, I had students that all they wanted to do was play Minecraft. So I decided to chalk away the part of the game that is, okay, let's try to make it something that is useful to the world and beneficial, the T3 part. And I said, I really don't care what you do in Minecraft as long as you do something or work towards a goal of something you have never done before. And it has to be interesting. And suddenly I have students, and I will say this is like day one of it. Suddenly I have students going on YouTube videos trying to make a plane in Minecraft because they want to see a plane fly in the game. Or they're making a 5 amusement park roller coaster theme park with 5 different rides in it to make students go in. Or they're making an entire city block, and I literally see being made a black and yellow road, like a road with houses on the side. And they really went this much farther than they usually do, just because in this game-like learning type of way, they had a goal they wanted to teach, and they had a hypothesis of how they're going to make it go. And when they couldn't, yeah, they looked up YouTube videos and different ways how to do it, and I was fine with that. Yeah. But yeah, it looks like that T2, so what you're saying is that T2 that's a fine place to be, really working on that until they are really understanding that model before they go to that third level of making a difference.
Yeah, you got to gamify students' self-appraisal of their learning. That has an exceedingly high effect size. When students are able to appraise their own learning growth by some form of expression or reporting, and that is following the strategies and production, the T 2.1 production. You got to get there before you can get to T 2.2 contribution, and you got to get there before you can get to T1, which is inquiry design. But the effect size of students essentially gamifying their growth is 1.33. It is a tripling of academic achievement. So when you do that, kids get really excited about their learning, and they build confidence. They think, oh, yes, I can do this. That's same kind of can-do attitude is immediately transferred over into the inquiry design element of the transcendent technology use domain, because kids feel like, I can make the world a better place. There's not that large of a leap from I can master this current learning to I can make the world a better place by identifying, investigating, and coming up with hypotheses or solutions to real life wicked problems that matter to me.
Now, I want to emphasize there's something I've noticed, and this is just a critique of it that I would advise teachers who do want to gamify and really work on the gamification points and levels. It is the students deciding on what their goals are and their learning outcomes, not the teacher. I imagine it could create a different effect if the teacher said, here's your goal you need to accomplish it, compared to a student saying, here is my own goal I am trying to accomplish. Am I correct in what you're saying there, that does align with that? Or if a teacher gave a goal, would the same thing occur?
Not quite. It's a little more subtle than that. I mean, as humans, we all want autonomy. We all want to have control of our actions and, be sort of, controllers of our own destiny. But at first, students aren't very good at creating their own mastery goals. They're not. They need practice. So we need to scaffold that process. And the way I suggest scaffolding in the book is to have teachers start with the learning intentions and the success criteria for each unit of study that they're going to measure student growth upon or within. So you start there, have students restate those goals in their own words. So they have to actually make sense of it, make meaning of it, and then restate it, reiterate it in a way that makes sense to them, that is part of their goal. That's how we build capacity for establishing mastery goals. And mastery goals are specific. They're really specific. You have to be really, really clear of what the intention is for the learner. They're strategic. So the learner needs to think about, what strategy am I going to do to achieve this goal? What strategy am I going to implement to achieve mastery on this learning intention? And they are also measurable. What scale am I going to use to measure? And I developed that scale to help facilitate that process of mastering, developing, beginning. So it's a little more nuanced than just teachers doing it or students doing it. At first, it has to be both. It has to be teachers scaffolding that process, particularly in the younger grades, until students become adept at it and start creating their own goals that are meaningful and useful.
But nonetheless, and it does sound like such a game in the way they do it, because as you said, the teacher says, here's what you need to do. The students have to restate it their own way. So they're already taking game of that. And because they have to think of their own strategy to achieve it, that is exactly what you said is your definition of games. They have to come up with their own strategies to do it. And I'm sure if your strategy doesn't work, you come up with a different strategy.
Yeah. In a way, one of the other things that's so powerful about game theory is the concept of immediate feedback. The feedback doesn't take minutes or hours or days or weeks or months. It takes nanoseconds. You have near immediacy with the feedback. That immediacy of feedback is associated with much higher levels of metacognition and reflection on the process, whatever it may be. One of the reasons why games are so popular is because we get immediate feedback on whether we jump the bridge or we skid off the road or our character dies. We get immediate feedback from the strategies that we apply. The same holds true for learning. If students can get more immediate feedback by creating representations of their knowledge and then tracking and monitoring their own feedback, that gamifies the learning process, and it quite literally accelerates it. It ramps it up to like ×4.
You know, I know that's an odd place to end, but that is such a great place. I think I want to end this interview right there. You really showed that these strategies are like this game like learning, and if we can all do this, it can be so powerful. And I do want to end, if you would like to hear more about Sonny Magana's work, of course his book Disruptive Classroom Technologies is a wonderful addition to any library. He also has a wonderful website, which is it Magana? You can probably say it better than me. I thought it was Magana Education. I had it up here and I lost it.
That's it. No, that's it. No, MaganaEducation.com. That's it.
Thank you, MaganaEducation.com. It is a great place to check out for his ideas. And how are they best to reach you if people want to ask him more questions? Idea. You said Twitter is a really good one, so I would tweet at Sonny Magana.
Yep.
If you would like to find out more from him. And seriously, read his stuff. And you know what? In the comments of this post, if you'd like to talk about this more, I'm sure I can relay those to Sonny Magana, and he would love to talk to you as well about all these different ideas that he has. Is there any better ways you'd like them to reach you, or does that kind of sum it all up?
No, I really appreciate that, Keen. In fact, I'll just leave with one last thing.
Please.
I've started an initiative, which actually, when we met was at the very first launch of this initiative, which I'm calling Take the T3 Challenge. So I dare you to double academic achievement by taking the T3 challenge and learning all about the strategies in the T3 framework, mastering them, applying them effectively in your classroom, and doubling academic achievement by working with me and working with Magana Education to build your capacity for not just translational technology use, but transformational and transcendent technology use. If the strategies of my framework have an effect size of a quadrupling of education, a quadrupling of academic achievement, we can certainly double academic achievement. It's within our grasp, and I've got a really reliable method for doing that.
You threw a challenge about in front of a bunch of gaming teachers.
I know, right?
Do you realize what you just did here? Ladies and gentlemen, he just threw down a challenge. That is hard for any of us to resist. Now, I know I wasn't even there when he issued the challenge, but as I said, I'm already doing his mastery sheet, and I have a class of after-school students trying to pick up trash and design 3D printed trash cans. I am on this challenge path.
Right on.
Challenge to all of you to do this. I know you cannot resist that. That is like you just knew how to end this, didn't you?
No, it just happened organically. But I invite you all. I dare you. Double dare you.
That is too hard to resist to my audience.
Oh, that's terrific. Well, thank you so much for a delightful conversation, Keen. It was a pleasure meeting, and thank you very much for carving out some time to talk to me tonight. It was just a real pleasure for me.
Absolutely. And at this point, I'm going to turn the camera on and say hello. Oh, hold on, let me get light so you can actually see me in this dark room that I'm in now. There.
Yeah, right. We
now I'm actually just off and just going to chat with you for a few minutes like I do. And I keep it, by the way, keep the broadcast recording because once in a while I find like a gem when we're talking like this. And I'm like, oh, I want that in the podcast.
Right.
But thank you so much. Seriously, thank you. That was you really, you're in everything we do with this so much. I just have, sorry, this giant light's in the way. Let me see if I can fix it somehow there.
No,
thank you so much.
What is your school district? You're not in. Are you in Oxford Unified High School?
Or? Oak Park Unified School District.
Oh, Oak Park Unified. Okay, good.
So we're in Oak Park Unified, and my job is the TOSA. I'm the teacher on special assignment, and so I really work with all classes, doing activities, engaging them, and doing as much as I can. But I actually am blessed this year, where I'm also working with the after-school program, and I work with their computer labs. And so I've just kind of taken the opportunity to be like, you know what, I can teach you as many days I can about here's some coding or here's some robots or here's Minecraft. And then finally I was just at a point at where I was like, you know, I can't really teach you anymore because you guys can do better than me. Like 6th graders can do Minecraft better than I ever could. And so my new goal is like, if you're going to do it better than me, I want you to make a goal for yourself and just try to make it do that thing that you haven't done before. Because that's how you do it. And suddenly I'm realizing like, and then I booted up your mastery charts. I just put them up there and I'm like, and we, you know, the first day or two I scaffolded a little bit because I work with only K through 5. And so we scaffold the thing a little bit and say like, here, 5th graders, how at the end of the day did you feel with your project? Thumbs up, thumbs down. We look at it. Okay, good. And they're just running with it. And thank you for this, because I'm going to take your advice, because as I said, I decided, let's try a little T3 and let's try to make the world a better place with it. And I did it with the 2nd and 3rd graders. Let's fix up the school. And they all were like, we need to clean up the lunch area. I'm like, okay, let's do it. How do we do it? And suddenly they were going from things like, let's make videos. I'm like, we can make videos in here, to let's make 3D printed larger trash can lids so you can easily throw trash into them. And I said, sure, why not? We can do that and super glue them together. But then I did the same thing the 4th and 5th grade, and they were just like, we just want to play Minecraft. So I appreciate knowing that I did the right thing, where I just said, fine, do something in Minecraft you haven't done before, which is what it was on the video. So I put it on the my question at the end is actually now on the interview, but it was great. But I said, fine, do what you can. And suddenly they're making, like, as I said, a theme park with 5 roller coasters in it in Minecraft, and a full city in the game. And one person's YouTubing how to make a plane work. So I guess really it comes down to what you said in that T2. They need to just learn how to be masters before they can go to that T3 to be motivated to that point.
Yeah. They need to learn how to be contributors.
Yeah.
That's really what does it mean to be a contributor? And unfortunately, it sounds like those 4th, 5th graders forgot how to be a contributor, and so they've learned in school that just playtime is playtime, and Minecraft is playtime. And so, hey, don't bug me. This is my playtime. I play the game of school. So this is what so they need to relearn what the 2nd and 3rd graders haven't lost yet.
Yeah,
which is really the innocence of making the world a better place. So
yeah. But I will say there was one 5th grade lesson that did work well, and I did full T3. That was when I tweeted you out too. They were doing a lesson on ecosystems. The rat traps. Yeah, they were doing ecosystems, and there at the end was supposed to do a lesson on snakes and mice, and how snakes and mice differ in the population. And then lo and behold, my wife finds on Facebook an article about the rat poison in the Santa Monica Mountains where I live that is killing the mountain lions because the other animals are eating and the mountain lions are dying. And we just straight threw that into them, and they were, I will say, that was like the T3 level. They were enthralled. And sure enough, after they made the rat traps, we had somebody from the organization come in and share their knowledge and reality. And they even said things like, all the rat traps you made, they actually aren't that good, because they want to make really humane rat traps, but you can't, it turns out, capture rats and then put them in the wild again. That's not like legal and dangerous. But like the amount of attention, I have never seen a class that enthralled in like a guest lecturer, because usually they're just like, ugh.
Yeah, it was meaningful for them. I mean, it was something that they cared about. So that's very cool. Yeah. And I'm glad that they're realizing that, you're never done making a solution. You're always iterating.
Right.
You always have to iteratively, develop and add some new things. So, yeah, that's very cool. Hey, well, listen, I'm going to have to jump.
I have to go too, me too. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the conversation. So thanks for giving me the space to kind of think freely. This is, I'm really glad it worked out, because this is the place where I do all that free thinking. And it was, so I shared some, like the whole, what analogy did I make up? I had some metaphor that I can't remember now.
When I play the episode again, you can hear it.
I know, I'm going to have to think of, what the hell did I say? It was some example that just, I thought, oh, I would need to use that. That's actually pretty good. So I can't wait to hear what I had to say.
Well, and I also, I'm not going to have to read the book by your partner you're working with. Oh my God, you used her name so many times. But yeah, Hetty, I'm going to have to find out everything I can about them, because that looks like my next goal of like a person to talk to and find out, because their information, Hetty's information, sounds like exactly my alley of passion and interest.
Yeah, no, it's great. I think everybody should do it. So yeah, and thanks for sharing the T3 framework at Oak Park. It's really cool that folks are taking it. So
well, I'll say, I mean, the beauty is, now that I have my own class for it, I can really pass it to them. But honestly, what you've done with the T3 is, myself and Enoch and Ellen, who are all at the Ventura County, we just sat there and said, we're solidly in T2. We're really there. That's T2, and we're comfortable here. So we're now trying to figure every way to reach T3, but that's taking our challenge of all our brain power to how to make that jump. But like, at least you can say we're very solidly T2, and the district can appreciate that. And it was a very good. We just thank you so much for Ventura.
Sure, sure. Well, there's some new courses that are available now for folks to level up and get badging for the T1 level,
Mhm.
innovation T2. So they have to learn, all the research and the resources to not just implement these strategies, but then evaluate the impact. And then
Mhm.
I've gamified that by
Right.
having credentials and badging. So yeah, check it out. But hey, listen, I do have to run. So
Yeah, me
thanks so
too.
much.
Thank you so much. All right.
And I'll look forward to hearing back from you and knowing when the podcast is up and running. Okay.
I will send it to you when I do. Have a good day.
All right. Yeah, you too now. Cheers. Thanks so much. Bye bye.